Hey everyone, welcome back to the Track Limits podcast presented by Formula Addict. I'm your host, Swish, with my co-host, Henny.
Hello.
Henny, how you doing?
Good. We did something really fun today, didn't we?
We did. I can't share too much about it, but I'm tired, but also
super excited.
Adrenaline is super high.
Yeah.
And
let's hope our guest matches it.
well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, our guest thankfully is a racer.
Okay.
Our guest knows a ton about motorsport, way more than us.
Okay,
but
then we're good. We're good.
Yeah, we should be fine.
Yeah.
This is an individual that if you're into motorsport, you definitely should recognize. An individual that, again, racing driver first, secondly, an entrepreneur, created this incredible company by the name of Driver61, a massive YouTube channel. They provide incredible content around motorsport, breaking it down, along with incredible programming and courses as well to help people get into the sport. Please welcome the founder, Scott Mansell.
Woo! Welcome.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me.
No worries. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I mean, I've got a bit of a flu, as I said before, but I'm soldiering on through.
Is that an excuse?
Yeah, I
for
think so.
the energy thing I just
I'm making
mentioned?
them already.
He's, lowering our expectations here, which I don't like. Don't worry. We're going to bring you right back up. Let's do it.
I love it. So we break down our interviews again. We have Q1, and then we get right into the rapid fire round. So I really want to get into Driver61. Firstly, how did you come up with the name? And secondly, what was the core vision behind starting it when you started it all those years back?
Well, the name actually comes from my father's racing number. So my dad raced, not Nigel Mansell, but my dad raced kind of at a club level in the UK racing classic touring cars. And his number was 61. So when I started Driver61, it wasn't based on the YouTube channel that it is now. I was coaching amateur racing drivers and young racing drivers. And so Driver61 was started because I wanted to give the information, the coaching information to young drivers across the internet. And so it's called Driver61 because my dad had taught me everything that I knew and I was trying to teach that to the internet. Wow. And so it was just a website from the beginning.
And that's amazing. And even talking about karting, you transitioned from single seats in the European Boss GP series at just 18. What was that experience like? And did you have that whole route of, I'm going to go into F1, this is the route I'm going to take?
Yeah, I mean, it was a wild journey, actually. It's quite an interesting story. So I karted until I was 16 years old. I then went into kind of small single-seaters. At the time, this was 2004, to do a season of Formula Renault, which was kind of the first rung on the ladder at that time, or Formula BMW, which Vettel did, was about £150,000.
Ooh.
Now, to try and raise £150,000 when you don't have the family money to do that is quite challenging. When the race is at a cold and wet Snetterton on a Sunday, the sponsors aren't that fussed about going to a race meeting like that. However, for the same money, we could use a Formula One car and race in the Boss GP series, and fly away to the European race circuits, have V10s screaming, and it was a much easier sell to the sponsors.
Yeah.
And also the other thing was at that time, being 18 and driving a Formula One car was actually quite unusual. Obviously the kind of average ages have come down a little bit in F1 in the past couple of decades, but back then that was very young. And so it was kind of an easier sell. And that was the reason why I went into that championship. Yeah. And we also, we got a lot of publicity, we got a lot of press. And it was incredible fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible.
And what's cool is when we were doing our research about you, we looked at all the different types of ways you've engaged with motorsport, right? You even mentioned before the show that you were testing ovals, and you've now gone into coaching. You've also tested F1 cars. With all of those different experiences, A, which one has been the most rewarding for where you are now? And B, which one do you highly recommend that people should definitely check out or be more interested in?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I mean, from the driving perspective, I've been lucky enough to drive 25, 30 different F1 cars over the years.
Incredible.
Wow.
Let me drive one.
I think you need to say that again.
So 25, 30, I need to count them all up actually, different God. F1 cars, ranging from like the early 80s up to the mid 2010s and everything in between. And it's fascinating, I think, when you drive that many cars just to see how they develop, over the years and how the driving styles changed, how the technology's changed, how the safety's changed. And so I feel very privileged to have that kind of unique perspective
Yeah.
where I've driven, so many F1 cars. So that's been a kind of particular highlight of the motorsport that I've competed in.
Yeah. And even talking about this whole transformation of motorsport, let's even talk about digital and how sim racing has taken off in the last, I won't even say 10, 15 years, but recently due to Drive to Survive. Where do you see that going, both on the traditional aspect of racing and then how sim racing can be its own league of its own?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating to watch it. When I was racing, professionally when I was 18, again, it was 2004, 2005. It didn't really exist how they do now. Nobody had one at home. Maybe some of the F1 teams had them, but they weren't that good, to be honest with you. And so it's been incredible to see how the technology has improved, how the realism has improved. And for sure, now they are good enough that you can assess more or less how good a driver is from them. And they're a good, training and practice tool for real life driving. I mean, I use them as well. Try and keep myself a little bit sharp, even though I'm approaching 40. And so, yeah, I mean, that's been fascinating. And then obviously, as you mentioned, the other thing is just seeing how it stands alone, right? To see how sim racing stands alone and just seeing how good those drivers are. I know James Baldwin. He's a very, very fast driver. And what I love about James is you can see his approach and his adaptability on the sim is how it would be in the real world. And that's why it's quick in a real world race car as well, because he can adapt to a changing situation. You can throw him in there and he's naturally talented and he knows how to figure stuff out. And that's what you need in the real world, because in sims, of course, you can have unlimited practice time. And that means that you might get some drivers where they just learn through brute force, through doing lots and lots of laps. But actually in the real world, because you have such limited testing time, even if you know the circuit and you know the car, getting it honed in with the setup requires a lot of skill, and you have to adapt and you have to move the car forwards very quickly. And so that's what I like seeing in the real world. And I do, to some extent, wish that would happen in sim racing as well, where everything was a little bit time restricted.
Yeah. And do you ever think there will ever be a sim racer, professional sim racer, turn into an F1 driver in the future?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't really have much doubt about that. Definitely as the two kind of get closer and closer together. I mean, we're already seeing it. I think once you get over the fact that you have the G-force and you have the kind of danger aspect in the real world, then it's actually very close. Last year, I took somebody on track for the first time in a Caterham car. They'd never been on track, but they had done a year or two of sim racing, and they're pretty good in the sim.
Yeah.
When I kind of sat next to them in this Caterham, they were quick straight away. They're a bit rough around the edges, but they were 97% of the way there.
Wow.
And I just having seen that in the detail and seeing the process of it, it just kind of said, okay, at some point, you'll be able to just transition across without really much thought.
That's incredible.
And walk us through some of the challenges that you've had, because again, you've had this life as a racing driver, you've had a life as an entrepreneur, with a team that you've grown and built. What are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome to be where you are now?
I mean, with racing, it's a different chapter of my life, but there were lots of challenges there. We kind of spoke briefly about the financial aspect of that. You're always trying to raise enough money to go and do the next season or even the next race, to be honest with you. And when you're a driver who's trying to raise money like that, it changes your mentality going into a race weekend. Like when I did Indy Lights in the US 2005, 2006, I only did the road course races because I'd come from the European circuit and I didn't know the ovals, and I had kind of a better chance on the road courses, but I wasn't doing any testing, right? So because you don't have the money, so the results sheets don't show that, but you're coming in, you go have a couple of sessions practice on the Friday, and you're going up against people who've been out in the car once or twice a week, for the previous 6 months, and it makes it extremely difficult. And then you're also extremely scared about having a crash. Not necessarily because of the safety, because when you're 18, you're not thinking about that. But the fact that, if you snap the car in half, it's going to cost you $100,000. And that's the end of the season. So it does change your mentality. That was my kind of biggest challenge, I suppose. And you'll hear that from a lot of drivers who struggled for money when they were racing. But then the other difficult thing was knowing when to stop.
Mm.
You know, I'm still doing some racing now, but purely for fun.
Okay.
Which is a really nice position to be in. Actually, I'm just looking at going to do some racing with my dad this year, right?
Nice.
And
so
that, you know, it's gold. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. But when you're when I was mid-20s, it's difficult to know when to give up, I suppose. It feels like you're giving up, right? You've had this passion, you've had this dream, you've had this single focus since you were 6 years old. And then at some point you just feel it tailing off and you're like, shit, you know, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And every year that you continue trying to raise the sponsorship or trying to get a driver, it feels like the end of the world. Every year that you do that, you're not progressing in other areas of your life. You're almost kind of pausing the rest of your life, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've seen in some of my, you know, my colleagues and other drivers over the years where they've kept on going. They went on longer than me, and it kind of, you know, everything pauses.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest mental challenge, was understanding when to do that and being okay with it.
Yeah.
You know.
And how do you do that second part, actually? Because I know, like, a lot of people, even actually some of the most successful people in the world, will say that they've had a dream shatter and they've had something they were really hoping would work out. It didn't work out. But not many people can say, well, I bounced back from it and I did something else with that dream or with that passion. You know, did it take a bit of time to get to that point, or was it like, okay, I'm going to stop racing and I'm going to focus on this? Was that clear enough for you at that time when you stopped racing?
It wasn't black and white. I would say I kind of blended my way there over a number of years. So I went from racing kind of at a high single-seater level to racing in prototypes with some amateur drivers, and you're kind of stepping your way there. And then eventually, you know, I had a good 5-year stint of traveling around and racing, and that was great fun. And then the traveling kind of becomes a bit of a, you know, it's great fun while you're doing it when you're kind of mid-20s. And then I was approaching 30, and you think, I don't want to be traveling around for the rest of my life. Like, you know, it also feels very inefficient when you've got lots going on. Like, you just sat on an aeroplane half the time. So that's when I wanted to start Driver61. And the reason that I wanted to do that was I was one person who was coaching, and it just wasn't scalable at all. And so I wanted to at least step in the direction of being a little bit more scaled. And that's why I started Driver61.
Yeah. And then even on top of that, you also launched Trophy.ai, which is an AI coaching platform.
Yeah.
Explain that and how AI even plays a part into what you do.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So Driver61, as I mentioned, originally was for coaching. Originally it was just articles. I was always interested in SEO and algorithms and all of that type of stuff. And so I created a resource for amateur racing drivers and track day drivers. And then got more into the video content because I prefer video than writing. And then during that period, I think 2018, 2019, I started making more sim-related content, and had a number of people reach out to me during that period who said, look, I love what you're doing. You've got good reach on social media. Let me, you know, present to you, and I've got a couple of ideas. Anyway, I spoke to 3 or 4 different people, and a guy called Mike Winter from Canada got in touch with me.
Hey, let's go. Let's go, Mark.
And it was a disaster. No, I'm joking. He got in touch with me, had a great presentation. Also, he was a nice guy, of course. And we just decided to start a sim training company. Wow. So basically, I developed a one-to-one program that I worked with amateur drivers on.
Yep.
I mean, in 2019, I worked with 120 different drivers.
Wow.
Throughout the year, it was a lot of coaching, and during that period, I learned a lot about how to get the most out of a driver. Because we ran. Sorry, just go on a kind of side track. I ran this on the same circuit in the same car, and the only thing that changed was the driver.
Oh, wow.
Whereas most coaches will go to Donington and then Brands Hatch and then Watkins Glen, and all in different cars, right? And so sometimes it's quite difficult to understand where the improvement is or where the problem is. But because I was in the same car on the same track and all the drivers came to me, everything was easy to kind of A/B test, you know, to go in that direction. And so I learned a ton about what the core problems was with a kind of human in a racing car.
Yeah.
And so that was fantastic. Anyway, we basically took that concept and we made a sim version of it. And we did a very kind of basic version of that at the beginning. That grew. Now we have a 4-week program for sim drivers where they do kind of on-demand training with exercises. And then at the end of each week, they have live training sessions with some of our Driver61 coaches as well. So it's a great course. From that, we then went out to raise some backing to launch an AI coach. We think there's a big opportunity there. What we want to do is enable the very best coaching in gaming and other sports is the long-term goal, without needing to pay £1,000 a day for a coach, right? Yeah. So everyone has access to the best coaching, and that's what we're aiming towards. And we've launched the beta already, and it's what the guys are doing is absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. The system will analyze your braking, your throttle use, your racing line, organize all of the problems, and then simplify it and tell you what the next thing to work on is.
Oh. And what does it integrate into? What platforms?
Just iRacing at the moment.
Yeah.
But we're just starting there because obviously there's a passionate user base, and that's the first place to start. But of course, we want to expand out into different platforms and different games.
Once it comes to F1, the game,
get us on it. Get us on
it.
It is also interesting though that you're working on something that honestly could displace what you built before, right?
Actually, Mike texted me yesterday, in fact, because we launched the first version of there's a version of the AI at the moment we've just released to a small number of people, where rather than just telling you what to do in terms of text, it will talk to you as you go around the circuit. So it's like having a live coach there. And he texted me and said, "Oh, Mike, I wasn't feeling well yesterday." He said, "Oh, well, don't worry, you've already coached 2,000 laps today." So just yesterday, we coached 2,000 laps. So it's incredible kind of how that works and the scale that you can get to.
That's amazing. We need to get Mikey on this.
I would love that.
Yeah. And they both have iRacing, which is Mikey's another of our hosts, and he's too heavy into iRacing. And he would love to use a tool like this.
We'll get you on it.
It would be awesome.
For sure.
I was even thinking, like, imagine if you could even customize your engineer's voice.
Oh.
I'd want to put Bono in my ear right away.
Look, we're giving you business ideas.
That's just $5.99 a month.
We'll pay it.
It's me at the moment. It sounds like me at the moment.
Final 2 questions here. I'm curious if you have any advice for young racers, people that are getting into the sport, what they should look out for. I know you mentioned, you have a kid and you're very excited about gauging whether motorsport could be a valid career path for them down the road. But for anybody watching that's like 15, 16, they've been karting now a couple of years, what should they be thinking about?
Well, of course, as we've mentioned, and as many drivers talk about, it's the finances is one of the things. I think there's lots of drivers who are skilled enough to drive in the sport. And I think especially now with the kind of testing that you can do in the sim, everything's going to get tighter and tighter at the top. Because before, when sims didn't exist, you would have guys who would, rent out a race circuit and for a week and just test, right? And so there was a barrier there. But in terms of advice for younger drivers, it would actually be more around kind of building their personal brands and building some social media presence, because I've seen that firsthand now and the opportunity that brings. And I think if I was 16 or 17 now with, a few million fans online, it might be a different story because you can bring something to a potential sponsor. I see so many kind of sponsor decks out there and people just asking for marketing dollars, and typically there's like 5 or 6 slides and they're just saying, oh, you can have this space on the car, you can come to the races. But what they're not doing is the proper marketing research. And I think it's like got nothing to do with racing, but actually it's a bit more about the marketing and what value you can bring to a sponsor. Have a real deep think about that. Try and build your social presence so that, you will, or you are more likely to get the marketing money.
And honestly, that's like a more tactical asset that you can provide instead of saying, hey, don't give up. Those everyone
Yeah.
hears
Yeah.
that all the time. But what you just gave there is such a key asset.
I think second piece of advice is probably
No one to give up.
to give up. I mean, that's what I was just saying about
Yeah.
my son, right?
Yeah.
I think if I don't have the money to back him or the connections to get the backing for him, then I will just go kart with him for fun.
Yeah.
I won't put him through that kind of middle ground like I went through. And I loved it, don't get me wrong, but when you're a kid and you're a teenager or younger, it's very difficult to understand. And especially in karting, like if you didn't have the best equipment, you were mid-pack at best.
Yeah.
I remember having a great engine, right? I was running top 5 in the national championship in my second year in kind of senior karting, junior karting when I was 12, 13 years old. And then that engine seized. The next year, we didn't have that engine, and I went back 10 places.
Wow.
And nothing had changed apart from the engine.
Yeah.
And so, and so like it's like that's very difficult to understand when you're young.
Yeah.
And so I want to be very careful with my own kids to not get in that situation.
Yeah.
And if we're going to do it, we do it properly.
Yes.
And if we don't, we just do it for fun. And
Yeah.
it's just the boys go away at the weekend and have some fun karting.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And last question would probably be around, look, you got trophi.ai, you got Driver61, you got other projects going. Are there some ones that you're working in this year that you can tell us about outside of that?
Can actually. This
Yeah.
is the first time that I've spoken about it publicly. So a couple of things that we're working on.
Yeah.
We've got a wallet coming out in a month, maybe 2 months' time. Really nice slimline wallet. But it's got a piece of actual Formula One car carbon embedded in the leather.
No.
Yeah.
You'd love that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be your first buyer. Just know that.
So we've just got the final prototype back for that. So we'll go
Wow.
into production soon. It's really cool.
my God.
And so yeah, it's a really really beautiful wallet, and actually it's a much harder process than you might think to get the carbon in the leather.
Right.
And then the second thing that we're exploring at the moment is we've got a lot of students and a lot of engineering students watching our content because of the type of content that we make. So we're just kind of trying to discover and understand how we can help them get into motorsport. And I don't exactly know what that looks like at the moment, but we're just kind of in the discovery phase because I would love to have Driver61 help more people get into motorsport.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the driving, but the just motorsport and get a role within the sport.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so yeah, we're looking over the options there.
Wow. That's fantastic.
You have a busy year ahead of you, but generally
It's not just
speaking,
me.
no, but generally speaking, we're rooting you on. Like
Yeah.
the mission overall of getting more people and democratizing that access to motorsport, phenomenal.
Amazing.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah.
We are going to put you through now a rapid fire round coming up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're ready. I don't know if you're nervous.
I'm nervous.
Okay,
Good.
good.
You should be.
Yeah. But we'll find out how well Scott can handle the rapid fire round right after. Welcome back to the Track Limits podcast. We are here with Scott. Scott, we're going to get into the rapid fire round. So brace yourself.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, sit up, get ready.
All right, first question. Which platform, social media platform, out of the bigger ones would you delete?
TikTok.
Oh, okay.
Spicy.
Racing memorabilia you currently own or would love to own?
I own Max Verstappen template for the wallets.
Oh my God.
We're about to cut it up, so
I'm a Max number
You
one
have
fan.
to be the first
yeah,
buyer.
I have to be your first buyer. We'll talk off camera.
other piece of memorabilia. I would like to buy a 1992 Benetton.
Okay.
That'll be
If you had to choose another sport to be an athlete in or even just create content in, what would that be?
Skiing.
Oh, we're about to go this
Whistler.
Whistler
Yeah,
in a few
yeah,
weeks
yeah.
to shred those mountains. Okay, next question. Most unpopular opinion you have?
That you can
Yeah.
publicly say.
It's like mind is rolling.
I made a video about. Do you remember when Max and Lewis came together at Silverstone at Cops?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Lewis had done it a couple of times before, where he'd
Mm-hmm.
understeered in a high-speed corner, gone a little bit offline. And I made a video about that, and I said it was, my countryman's fault, and that was quite unpopular. Yeah.
I feel like it would have been unpopular either way, though.
Yeah,
to be
you can't
fair.
win with those
No,
memes.
Yeah.
both fan bases you can't win.
Give me an approximate number. How many times have you probably been asked, "Are you Nigel Mansell's son?"
Oh, okay. Over 1,000 times, I would
Oh
say.
my
Yeah.
lord!
When I raced in the US,
Yeah.
actually, Speed TV over there ran a little segment saying that Nigel Mansell's son was going to race
Oh my
over there. But I wanted the press so much that I didn't say anything.
Correct
We just
them.
let it run. Yeah.
See, marketing.
Love it.
You know.
We should do a clip right here. We
Yeah.
have Nigel Mansell's son on today.
Best prediction for the 2024 F1 season.
Best prediction.
Yeah.
Well,
It can
as
be
in who's going to
bold.
win?
Yeah,
or
it can be bold, random prediction.
Lando will win a race.
Okay.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, not the whole
Oh,
thing.
yeah, I was like,
he'll win a
nervous
race.
there when he
I had
said
to look
Lando
at you
will
for a
win.
sec.
Yeah. All right. If you woke up and realized you had become Lewis Hamilton, what would you do? What's the first thing you would do?
Apologise for knocking me off at Wigan in like 1997, maybe.
Oh my god.
You're not holding grudges.
Been like
Oh
30
my
years.
Lord.
That is great.
That's a good one. Outside of work, what's your favorite random addiction that you have?
Okay. Outside of work, I mean, racing. Yeah, I make content now for a living.
Yeah.
Racing is my favorite thing.
addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most embarrassing moment you've had at a race weekend or creating content?
Oh god, there's a lot of those. Most embarrassing thing at a race weekend. I had a crash at Spa about 4 years ago in an LMP3 car, where I shouldn't admit to this. God, you guys.
Do it. Do it.
I'd slowed down. It was a quali lap, and I'd messed up coming into Lacombe, so the lap was binned. And I slowed down, and then I wanted to carry on to get some temperature in the tyre, so I went through the next section, that right-hander, and I went off. I just
the
went
gravel.
off. I into the wall. Yeah. Yeah, I went off. You know when you see a racing driver make just a stupid mistake?
That
It
was
was a
the one.
stupid mistake, yeah, because I was coming through in a kind of different line, the tyres had...
Oh lord.
Did you make an excuse like, "Oh, something's wrong with the car"?
I
Brakes
thought,
wasn't
something had
working.
broken. I thought something had broken, and then I watched the video and was like, no, shit, that was me.
all me. Oh my lord. Next question. If you could have one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Avocado.
Oh, wow. That
I love
is
avocados
quick.
too, but wow. That's a good one. That's a good one.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure TV show?
Succession.
Okay. great.
Okay.
Yeah. Season 3 now?
Trying to get business advice from it, so... No, I'm joking.
Not the show to watch.
Next question. If you were trapped in an elevator with a current F1 driver, who would it be and why?
Lando would probably be a nice person to share a lift with. Depends how long. We could stay in there for days. Yeah.
You're writing an autobiography on your life. Which of these titles best resonates with you? The Daredevil, the Dreamcatcher, the Free Spirit, the Hardest Worker.
Nigel Mansell's son.
The Daredevil, probably. Yeah.
The Daredevil.
I didn't think that I didn't used to think that I took risk. And then as I've got older, I've looked back and thought, oh, actually, I do a little bit, yeah.
That was the most brilliant rapid fire round.
Yep. That was,
think
that was
I've
actually
ever
so funny.
That was great. Kudos. Thank you again for
Yes.
coming on, Scott. Very curious. Final question we ask every guest: legacy. Do you think about it? And if you do, what sort of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, I suppose I don't think about it too much. I think I'm kind of you building that through life, right? With everything that you do and the decisions that you make. But yeah, I mean, helping people move into their passion, I suppose, is the main thing. Like, as we spoke about with the motorsport roles, but also like I've managed to take my passion, my love for motorsport and cars and find another route with it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people should step back and take a look at what they actually love and try and move into that area, because there are many different ways to do it.
Brilliant, especially in today's world. Thank you again for coming on. Guys, check out Driver61. We're going to link all the socials for them below. A lot is coming, and we're very excited to see where Scott and Driver61 go. On behalf of Henny and I, we're very excited, by the way, to not only have you guys check out this episode. If you liked it, like, share, subscribe. Perhaps check out a bit of the merch. Kind of looks nice. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks.